little bit. There we go. Now we're recording. So Jeffrey Gallup, tell us a little bit more about you, and start with your practice in Mansfield and kind of what's that about.
Sure. So our practice is Mansfield Counseling. I've been in business now for a little bit over 14 years. We have grown to become this group practice, one of the largest around us. We have 10 people that work for me, divided across students, associates, fully licensed, and fully licensed supervisors. So we kind of run the gamut of everybody's level of training and development. And feel like I've been pretty successful at running a business. So kind of feel like I have a good place to talk about how to get your business off the ground, and hopefully I can guide a few people away from making some of the same mistakes I made when I started off. A little bit more about me specifically. One of my big areas of concentration is assessment, and particularly forensic assessment. So court-ordered assessment to determine diagnoses, or things like competency to stand trial, fitness to return to work, those sorts of things. And I've been doing that for several years now too. So that's kind of really the gist of me at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've got my Mountain Dew that I'm working on getting the caffeine into me.
Hey, you sound lively to me. That's all right. You sound like you're awake. You're 8 o'clock awake. This is we're an early morning group, right? I mean,
I'm 8 o'clock awake. I will give you exactly that.
Well, and the interesting thing about this talk, Jeffrey, you're going to be talking to more than just associates. You're talking to supervisors, right? Because when we came up with this topic, it was sort of like, okay, who's this? Who needs to hear this, right? Not just the associates, but the supervisors who are brave enough to supervise them, right? As self-employed. Yeah. So I think we're going to have a mixed group today listening to all of your good stuff.
Good, good. Well, I do have a PowerPoint to kind of start us off and guide us that I would like to run us through. And then I will be glad to Q&A and discuss everything from running a business, starting a business, to the ethics and to some of the ethical concerns that supervisors would have or associates would have to be more aware of than just a regular fully licensed person that's going to go start their practice. So to that, I think I need to hit share my screen, and I'm going to try that and that. Or actually, let's do that. All right. Cool. Did that work?
That worked. So that's our first win this morning. Well, no, the first win is that this is all working.
Yeah. Okay, so recently the boards made a pretty significant change, and now associates can own a practice, which, in a lot of ways I think is great. Provides more accessibility to more Texans. It gets us more in line with actual legal requirements and taxes requirements and all of that jazz. But, it's a win all the way around. And I think as we grow and everybody gains more experience with this and whatnot, it'll eventually become second nature that associates can own practices and won't be such a, you know, a change from where things have been. So, to me, the biggest thing that I think everybody needs to keep in mind, associate supervisors, anybody that's going to be starting a private practice, is there's two jobs. One is your job as a counselor, regardless of, you know, that is who you are. That's the service you provide. But owning a private practice also means you have a second job as the business owner. I can tell you that today, I get to clean my whole entire offices because it's, well, my turn, and that's all we've got. And if the plumbing gets stuck, I either get to be the guy that calls the plumber, or I get to be the one that gets to fix it. Human resources, I handle all the interviewing and payroll setting upping. And yep, I'm also the senior vice president in charge of social media presence. When you own a business, you are the person that's in charge of everything. So it's not just like, ooh, I'm a counselor and that's all I do. It's a part of what I do. It is the main aspect of things, but I still have to actually run the business. So that's bookkeeping, human resources, facilities management, whatever fun titles you want to give yourself, you can, because you're going to be the one in charge of it. You can delegate some stuff, but ultimately the buck stops with you. So I always caution anybody that before they jump into owning a business, be it a private practice as a counselor, or as a friend who's come to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business. This is one of the very first things I talk to them about is, you know, are you mentally at least ready to take on those responsibilities that, you know, you may not really know anything about, being the janitor or bookkeeping or anything else, but you're going to have to learn really fast. For associates in particular, find a supervisor that's not just willing to help you out and to supervise you and says, yes, you can own your own practice. I really think that for your greatest chances of success, find a supervisor that has run a business themselves, and has been successful at it. Doesn't necessarily mean they got to be doing it right now, but there are so many different weird little pitfalls and ethical conundrums that can come up just running a practice that I think you need to find a supervisor that's not just supervising because that's what they want to do or like to do it, but somebody who is supervising and can help you from a place of their own practical experience. And make sure that they really understand ethics. And I would say, I would hope that that is what you're looking for in any supervisor, but, you know, take the time to do your homework to make sure that you're getting quality supervision. And keep in mind, we're taught virtually nothing about private practice in grad school. I think the grand total of what I learned about private practice in grad school can be summed up in the, well, people don't make a whole lot of money in this field statement. Okay. Anything else I should know about running a practice? Nope. And we moved on. So pretty much have had to learn on my own, learn on the go, or take courses and learn and research and read and reach out to people and all of that.
Jeffrey, you bring
So,
up a really good point. I just want to, because one of the things I
yeah.
read in the Facebook threads that I stalk with LPC Associates in it, it's this conundrum of, I want to be in private practice. I've got this supervisor who says they're willing to supervise me, but how do I find a good ethical supervisor? We're seeing more of a buyer beware now with the LPC Associates, because perhaps supervisors are seeing this business opportunity and, oh, I can take these folks on. And the LPC associate doesn't know how to do both. Are you a good business person? Are you a good ethics person? Right? It's just, they're newbies, right? They're level one. They're coming out. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think one of the very first things I would say there is put the cost of supervision a little bit further on the back burner. One of the things that almost always is the first question people ask me when they call or want to work with me as a supervisor is, what do you charge? Well, I charge this amount. Oh, well, I can get it for free over there. Well, okay, but a lot of times you get what you pay for. So, remember that supervision is an investment in your career. It may be, 18 months or 3,000 hours, and that's a very short amount of time when you consider that this may be a career that you do from, the age of 30 until you're 80 or more. I mean, there's no mandatory retirement age. So take that time to then further interview your potential supervisor. It is, you're hiring them, not them hiring you. And so, it needs to be something where you feel like you're getting something out of it. So ask them the questions. And I think people that are good, that are knowledgeable, and that are willing to take you on are going to have good replies and good answers. Just ask them, what's your business experience has been? Did you do, have you had your own private practice? Did you own a business in another career? How was your lemonade stand? Did it actually produce a profit? Ask those questions and make sure that you feel comfortable with them. Don't just jump on the first person that says, yeah, I'll see you for free. Or, we'll charge you $10 a session, an hour. Yeah, I mean, it may save you money, but I don't know if that money you saved is going to be worth the headache that you might have down the road when you run into an ethical problem, or you have to deal with a board complaint and your best defense is, well, my supervisor didn't tell me. The board is not going to love that as your defense. So take the time and interview them. So kind of moving away from specific things in regards to counseling. This is just stuff that you got to think about and know when it comes to running a business. And I'll talk to you about some of the pitfalls that I fell into and why I picked these things as stuff to be aware of. First off, do some market research. Okay. Who else is in practice around you? Where do you want to build your practice? When I very first started out and I was looking to build a practice, I was living in North Dallas, and there was this building it looked perfect. The rent was going to be amazing. And I had found it online, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go take a look and actually see what this building looks like. Get there, great parking, great location, everything you could think of. Walked inside, and I was just taking a look at the listing of businesses. And sure enough, I found the other Jeff Gallup, who is an LPC in Texas. And literally I was thinking, oh, I'm going to rent an office. Oh, crap. How is this going to work? Because I'm going to advertise and people are going to walk in his office, and people are going to walk into my office, and they're going to be in the wrong place. This is not going to work for either one of us. It also happened to have like the better part of 30 LPCs in that building alone. So I wasn't too sure that that was going to work best for me. So location matters, and thankfully, to some degree, with teletherapy and things like BetterHelp and all of those, where you build your practice is a little bit less important than it used to be, because I know several people who have started being in private practice and solely do it from home via teletherapy. So that may be a way to start things off until you are ready to find an actual physical location. But like I said, where's everybody else in your practice? It's weird, but everywhere I've ever gone or lived, counselors, we all congregate. We all seem to find that one or two buildings where everything is perfect, and we just kind of take over the buildings. Here in Mansfield, we've got a business office park, and one building is literally full of LPCs and LCSWs. To the point where somebody says, well, I think their offices, and I'm like, yeah, it's over there. Because I know that that's really the only other place it is. So do you want to be next door to everybody else, or do you want to be somewhere else? And to that, I would say, where are the medical doctors, the chiropractors, the social workers, psychologists, pediatricians, schools, neighborhoods? Depends on where you locate, can have a lot to do with the kind of clientele that you bring in. You could pick, Southeast Fort Worth, and I would probably tell you that in a majority of your clients are going to be Medicare based. And if that's who you want to work with, then great. That would be where I would tell you to locate. If you want to work with children, you probably want to put your office closer onto pediatricians and growing neighborhoods. And those are the kind of things you can start to think about in regards to location. Now, I will tell you the one thing to do, that when you go to rent an office space, do not tell the realtor, the leasing agent, or anybody else what you do until you actually sign paperwork and have negotiated what the cost is. Because what I have found is that when you say counselor, they usually tack a zero on somewhere. They do it to medical doctors, they just think we have money that we really don't. And I learned that because I had called a few places, got one number, called a few the same places back a little while later, told them I was a counselor, and all of a sudden that number had gone up, drastically gone up. So do your best to wait until things are finalized and, you've got a solid number on paper, and then share what you do and who you are. That way you don't get taken advantage of. So what makes you different? Again, part of market research. You have 10 LPCs all in the same building, and they all see the same basic clientele, 15 to 85, and they all take insurance. Well, why would I pick one from the other? They all seem to do the same thing. So put yourself in the shoes of, mom, dad, wife, spouse, layperson, whatever. I don't know why that is. Hold on a minute. Yeah, like I said, what makes you different? Because that is what you're going to sell yourself on. That's what you're going to show people that why they need to pick to work with you.
So Jeffrey, I want to throw something in here, because one of the things I saw in one of our, another thread was a lot of LPC associates are confused about, actually a lot of LPCs and LPC supervisors too. Is it a rule that LPC associates cannot be paneled on insurance? And it is not a rule. So there's nothing in the LPC code that precludes or stops an LPC associate from taking insurance. What stops them from taking insurance is the insurance company, right? There's no insurance company that, I think I've heard Cigna, but I'm not sure how they do it, or what that looks like. But I just want to take it back when you said, when you put your office around doctors or other folks who take insurance, what makes you different, LPC associates, is you cannot take insurance. So you will have to do some kind of a cash basis, right?
Correct.
But they can provide a super bill.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that stops them from doing that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that there'll be cash basis, but.
Yeah. And Kate, you bring up a really very good point. And I was going to kind of address that here in just a moment, but we can go right into it. There is absolutely no rule anywhere that says that associates cannot take insurance. That has nothing to do with law. It has everything to do with the insurance companies. They can pick and choose who they want to put on their panels.
Right, and somebody was saying, Dana asks if it was changing, because some allow supervised billing, but I think you're about to say that it's really just up to insurance. Yeah,
I mean, if it changes, that's a decision the insurance companies make. Again, I'm going to reiterate, it is not up to the board on whether or not we can take insurance. It is not up to any kind of governmental agency or entity. It has nothing to do with that. It is a business decision made by the insurance companies. And often, if you look at their requirements, they will even have requirements such as, 3 years post full licensure. So,
right.
they don't have to put you on their panel. When you go to get onto insurance panels, you fill out huge amounts of paperwork, and then they decide whether or not they want to work with you or not.
Yeah, the market might be saturated. It might be, there are too many therapists in this zip code, and so you don't get into that zip code. You have to pick another one. And
yeah. So it has nothing to do with law or
Now,
ethics.
we have one comment. It's Rachel, the super bill, and I may be calling it the wrong thing, but if you have a receipt with the diagnosis, your EIN or your tax ID and the CPT code and the provider name, that customer or client can submit that to insurance as a super bill, right? And then insurance could choose to repay that or not. I mean, it's really up to the insurance company, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly it. A super bill just is that. It's like an invoice that the client can share to the insurance company. Now, if your client has out-of-network benefits, likely the insurance company will use the out-of-network benefits, which usually means they have a really high deductible that has to be met. But that is a way to do things. And I will tell you that I think that this lack of being able to take insurance will make it a little bit harder on LPC Associates to sell yourself. One of the very first questions I get when I'm networking with medical doctors or chiropractors or whatever is, do you take insurance? And I do. So, I just tell them, yeah, we take these 10 insurances and great, we move on. But I do think that if you were to respond with, no, I don't, you're going to have to be savvy to immediately come back with, this is what we charge. This is how we do a super bill. This is how we help our clients to afford our services.
And Rachel brings up a good point. A super bill is not magical. I mean, just because you have a super bill doesn't mean that the insurance is going to reimburse that. And it's not like a golden ticket, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is just the way that if insurance is going to reimburse, that is what they require to do so. But it is not a magic ticket. I've had situations where I've given out super bills and the insurance company has said, no, thanks.
Yeah.
And that's that. But
now the HSA is an interesting animal because your client could have a credit card. Like it looks like, it feels like, swipes like a credit card. And but it's still up to the insurance company. Like once that charge goes through, I mean, and you tell me, Jeffrey, do they match that to the credential of the business? I mean, so if our LPC associate is owning this business and it's a PLLC, do you think that's an issue when the HSA takes that cash or gives that cash?
I don't actually think that is so much an issue. What I do find is, and it's kind of a weird behind the scenes thing, when you set up to take credit cards, you need to make sure that you indicate that you're a medical practice, because that's what the HSA card is going to be looking for behind the scenes when they run. And if you're not indicated in all your stuff when you set up to take credit cards, if you're not indicated as a medical practice, you usually get denied, or it'll pay, but then it'll flag and your client will come back to you and want a bill and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you are set up as a medical practice, it should go through. It's not tied to credential as far as I know. So, all right. Business plans. They don't have to be overly complicated or super fussy. Keep in mind, Southwest Airlines, literally their business plan started on the back of a napkin. Okay. Now, someday, you'll probably want to rewrite your business plan and make it super duper complicated, fussy, bound and awesome looking, but really to start off with, you just need a plan for how you want to run things, how you want to promote things and turn it into a sustainable, growing, thriving business. For example, there's a picture of the Southwest Airlines original business plan, which basically was two guys in a bar saying, you know what, let's build an airline that flies between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. All right, let's do it. And they were profitable and, eventually they got a little bit more complicated. But you don't have to create an enormous plan. Keep it simple. I want to see this demographic. I want to charge this amount of money. I am going to promote myself this way. Because your business plan is what you fall back to when you start going, oh man, what am I supposed to do? It's Friday afternoon and I'm sitting here in my office and I don't have any clients and I'm bored, and what should I be doing to build my business? Go back to your plan. Ooh, I should be marketing to doctor's offices, or I should be catching up on my accounting or whatever it is. I would say get fussy with your business plan when it's time to go to a bank for a loan, or you're wanting to buy a building, or you've been doing it for several years and it's time to grow your business plan. Next big step, how are you going to pay for things? I can tell you, you're not going to be profitable that first month. If you are, awesome, call me, you're doing something I'm not doing. But are you going to take out a business loan? Are you going to work part-time in one job and build your practice part-time as another? Are you going to rely on your spouse for support? Keep in mind, you probably will have rent to pay, possibly electricity and utilities, and some marketing. Thankfully, our profession is one where you can start your business relatively inexpensively. I rented an executive suite for about $150 a month. I used my furniture from grad school to furnish my office. And I had an old laptop, and that was pretty much my my office. And in fact, the desk that I'm even using still to this day was a desk that was sitting in the office that I rented, and the building manager was like, hey, do you need a desk? And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, that one's yours. Okay. Later found out this thing weighs about 1,000 pounds and he didn't want to move it, and that's why it's mine. But I got it for free. You don't have to spend tons and tons and tons of money right off the start. Websites are relatively inexpensive. So build a website, get a place to office from, and keep it cheap. Don't go running around and spending money on things that aren't going to immediately return a profit or return money back to your pocket. Business cards, find the cheapest business cards you can. The fancy dancy ones, they don't matter because nobody keeps business cards. They look at it, they go, wow, that's a really cool business card. And they shove it in their desk or they throw it in the trash. So don't spend money where you don't need to. I worked part-time, well, I worked full-time. I worked for Humana for about a year and built my practice part-time nights and weekends until I had reached a point where I was, my income from my practice was just about equal to my income from Humana, at which point it made more sense to leave Humana and work full-time in my practice, and build it into something. I've never taken a business loan. I have one business credit card for emergencies. And I think the most I've ever put on it at one time was a couple $1,000s. I had to buy an air conditioning unit, which talk about. I moved into a building. I didn't do my due diligence. The owner was like, oh yeah, this is a standard building rent contracty thing. 2 months after I moved in, the air conditioner died. And I went back to him and was like, hey, you need to fix the air conditioner. He goes, nope, read your contract. Read the contract. Yep, he was only responsible for things inside the building and not the air conditioner. So yeah, I ended up having to emergency buy an AC unit. That sucks. So yeah, that's the most I've ever been in debt for my practice at one time. And so there's lots of ways to build your practice without taking out business loans, without having to borrow money, without doing that, just finding an inexpensive place to rent or lease. Sometimes other counselors will let you borrow their offices for the hours or the times they're not there, or they'll rent you their office space for relatively inexpensively to start off. I know lots of people that have started off that way. They've worked Saturdays while the person who, had been established was like, oh, great, you can rent my office space for, I don't know, $50 or whatever for Saturdays. And there you go, and you're set.
Hey, Jeffrey, so what is the thing you should spend money on? Because one of the things I'm hearing you say is like, it would be worth your time to buy an hour of an attorney's time just to read that contract, right? I mean, kind of strategically spending your money. Like what would you tell a new practice wannabe owner to really put your money into? And maybe in the chat, y'all can chime in there too. Like what would you say is the thing to spend some money on?
Probably the first. You know what where I would spend my money would be lunch. And I'm not saying that just from like, I like food, but things like taking lunch to a doctor's office, taking an attorney and saying, hey, I'm just starting off. I want to build a relationship. I want to get to know people. Can I take you to lunch? That is by and far the most effective way I have ever built my practice, is by networking. Yeah, I've got a website and a Facebook page and Instagram, and I don't really have any clue how to do any of that. But going and having lunch with the doctor is way more valuable than anything else. And yeah, secondarily to that, I would say creating a relationship with an attorney. Find a friendly one. There are several friendly attorneys to our profession. Dr. Michael Flynn in Fort Worth, Laurel Clements over in North Dallas are both fantastic people. They're attorneys and mental health professionals.
Who's the first one you mentioned? I'm going to type them in the chat.
Dr. Michael Flynn. He was a psychologist for a gajillion years, then went back to law school. And Laurel Clements, I think, was probably more familiar to most people. Those are the two that are localish to DFW, but there are others that are in Houston, the Austin area. Call them up and, ask them what an hour of their time would be, and ask them to look at all your paperwork. Take them to lunch, build a relationship with them. It'll be invaluable to have an attorney that that you trust, that you can call. Now, they're not likely to work for you for free just because you bought them lunch, but that's a good way to start networking with them. And yeah, I wish I had taken the time to spend the I don't know, $200 for an hour for somebody to have read that contract, because I spent $4,000 or so on an air conditioning unit. Like I said, lots of pitfalls that I have decided that the easiest way to learn is to just make every mistake possible. So, before you ever see clients, you got to kind of have to figure out, are you going to be a limited liability corporation, a professional limited liability corporation, a sole proprietor, an S Corp, a C Corp, a B Corp? There's so many different business structures, and they all affect how you pay your taxes, your ability to raise money, paperwork you need to file, personal liability. And these are things that I know that I could go on for days and days and days just talking about business structures and the best structure for you. But keep in mind, you don't have to incorporate from day number one. You can change the structure you have. You can be a sole proprietor for a year or two until you get your feet under you and you're profitable and doing well. You can change to a corporation.
People really fixate on this, Jeffrey. I think I see this, like a lot of LPC associates look at this as step one, and it's really not. I mean, in Texas, at least, nobody can take your house. I mean, and nothing can protect you from a complaint. So get good malpractice insurance. So there are lots of ways to make sure you're protected, but yeah.
I would tell most people for the first year, at least, just be a sole proprietor. You're going to make possibly a profit, which will probably increase what you may owe on taxes at the end of the year. But it's just the easiest way to at least get established. Then once you're established and you've networked and you've spent some time in the forums, the creating a badass business and all of that stuff, then you can figure out what is best for you and for your practice. And trying to figure that out before you ever even really have a practice does not make any sense, because I started off as a sole proprietor, moved to a limited liability corporation, and about 3 years ago changed over to an S Corp. But had I been an S Corp to start off with, that wouldn't have made any sense. I'd have been so underwater paying taxes on stuff I didn't need to pay taxes on. So I would just tell people, just start as a sole proprietor. Your liability is very limited. Like Kate said, nobody can take your house away in Texas if, something really weird happens. And in all likelihood, you're not going to be making enough money that anybody is going to target you for a malicious lawsuit. And even then, you're going to have malpractice insurance that will cover a lot of your liabilities. So don't get fixated on becoming Jeffrey Gallup LLC, or Jeffrey Gallup Incorporated. Just throw open your practice as a sole proprietor.
So there's a question in the chat. What's the difference between LLC and PLLC?
Yeah, LLC is limited liability corporation. PLLC is professional limited liability corporation. And limited liability corporation is really open for any business that wants to incorporate. PLLC is professional limited liability corporation, and that's reserved more for medical doctors, us. It's really pretty similar, but it provides a few other protections and tax dilly madoohickeys and whatnot. And really, to get into the nitty gritty of what's the best for you, that's the time when you need to ask an attorney and an accountant what is going to be best for you. I had a friend who, she started off as a sole proprietor. It was really time for her to change things so that her taxes would work best for her. And she went straight into creating an S Corp, which is a type of corporation. And she skipped right past the whole LLC, PLLC stuff. But really, with the business structures, once you get to that point, you're going to want to talk to an attorney and an accountant, somebody who can help you with that structuring of your practice. But to start off with, stick with sole proprietor. It's really kind of the easiest.
And it sounds like the other place to spend some money is talking to an attorney. If this is something that you or your significant other is really concerned about and wants to make sure, like, sit down and buy some time.
Yeah. And I can tell you that the attorneys, Laurel Clements, Michael Flynn, really any of the attorneys that are friendly to our profession, they would much rather sit down with you for an hour or two figuring all this stuff out than defending you in a board complaint or a law, a malpractice suit or any kind of thing. They're much more rather help you with that kind of thing than dealing with anything else. So yeah, it's worth spending your money on an attorney. All right, pick a name for your practice. There's all kinds of ways to pick a name. I went with Mansfield Counseling because nobody else was Mansfield Counseling, and I'm in Mansfield. But did you know that there is literally, I am not even kidding you, a Mansfield in every English-speaking country on the planet? So one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call. I answer it because I'm figuring it's an emergency. This lady on the other end of the phone is just distraught. And I can't understand her to save my life. She has got this incredibly thick Australian accent. Yet by the time I got her to calm down and figure out things, she was trying to schedule an appointment for her child for counseling in Mansfield, Australia, not Mansfield, Texas. We both had a great laugh that would be a hell of a commute for her. Yeah, had I realized that, I might have gone with a different name. Probably won't at this point because I've been Mansfield counseling for 14 years. I'm not really keen on changing. But take a little bit of time, look around. As counselors, we all tend to kind of congregate to the same images and the same names. I don't know what you call a stack of rocks, but if I see another stack of rocks on somebody's website, I'm gonna go nuts. I don't know why that's what we're all drawn to, but I've seen the stack of rocks thing a gazillion times. You could always just name it after yourself. You could name it after your town and your location. I've seen just about every variation of healing, calm that you could come up with. Really go with, pick something that's memorable, that works for you. Because then the next part, registering your business or alerting the feds that, hey, you're now in business. Thankfully, most small businesses really do not have to do much, but getting a tax ID. A tax ID is like a social security number for your business. And in fact, I would say that's something that you really, really need so that you're not just putting your social security number out there for everything. Use your tax ID number, because the tax ID number is associated with your business and not your social security. And getting a tax ID is like a 10-minute online, fill out a couple of forms process. It doesn't take much of anything to do it. Then register your business name with state and local governments. Basically, this helps to make sure that you're not accidentally copying somebody else's name or somebody else isn't copying you. But that's really about all that you get out of that. If you are really dead set on protecting your name, you got to trademark it, which is through the US Patent Office, and it's expensive, and I would say it's not something to spend your money on right out the gate. And registering your business will probably help you to not run into local legal issues. I had started my practice and I was renting space for about 3 years, and then moved buildings, and our new building, the landlord said, you need a certificate of occupancy. And I was like, well, what's that? Well, it turns out in Mansfield, you have to have a certificate that says you paid Mansfield $50 and you're going to be in this building.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had spent 3 years not doing that.
So Jeffrey, we got about 1 more minute. What's your last burning thing that you think would help us the most?
Okay. Last burning thing.
Well, yes, your contact information.
Yeah, no. Go to the bank. All right. That's not to take out a business loan, but that's to set up checking. You got to have a place to store your money. and you don't want to mix your business with your personal. Okay. It will make accounting at the end of the year incredibly messy if you've mixed your personal income with your business income and all kinds of stuff. So head over to the bank and get at least one business checking account. Depending on how you do accounting, you may need more accounts than that, but at least start with one business banking account. And usually the bank people will have a small business specialist that can talk to you a little bit more about your structures and what would be best for your accounting and everything else. And make friends with that person because they tend to be pretty knowledgeable about banking and business stuff, and it can really pay off. So that's my last big point.
Yes, money is important. Show them how they can contact you, Jeffrey, if they have questions.
Yep. Okay, so Jeff at mansfieldcounseling.com. I made it really hard.
Simple is best, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I've got time. I'll be glad to stick around for Q&A. If we've got to wrap it up now, that's fine too, or whatever.
Well,
whatever
Jeffrey,
works best.
you'll actually be, if for those of you on social, Jeffrey is in Texas Counselors Creating Badass Businesses. He is also in Texas Supervisor Training. For those of you who are supervisors, then those are both free groups. And Jeffrey, you are one of the ones that gets the job sites together. I mean, that's super cool. A lot of people who are wanting to hire grad students in LPC Associates, you keep that thing pretty current, don't you?
Yeah, in fact, I think you tagged me. We had a couple more that want to be added to the list. So I was going to take care of that today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeffrey, and everybody have a wonderful day. And so, Jeffrey, are you good with taking Q&A in the Badass Business Group? I just went out of focus. I hate that. So yes, y'all go to Texas Counselors Creating Badass Businesses. And if you are not in that group, shoot Jeffrey an email.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all for having me.
Have a great day, everybody.